Hello everybody, welcome to the official video of the IGDA meeting for May 2018. Let's get some of the panelists in here too. And nice. Alright, so I'm going to run through the slides and then we'll get to some Q&A from there. So we talked about what the panel is, and let's all introduce ourselves. My name is Josh Jones, and I do game programming at WildWorks, which is a game company of about 50 people down in Draper. And we make a game called Animal Jam, which is a game for kids where you can play as an animal, and then it's free, but then if you pay, then you can have more fancy stuff for your animal. And it's on mobile and web. So. And then I run a lot of the IGDA stuff here. So.
I was gonna say, aren't you guys sponsored by National Geographic?
We partnered with them.
Oh, you partnered with them.
And so we show some of their content in our game, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm Nick Lives. I'm 1/4 of local indie studio Delhi Interactive. We made a multiplayer cooperative, or it's redundant, a cooperative online game where you drive a submarine together with your friends called We Need to Go Deeper. And that's done well enough that I've managed to make it a year as a full-time indie, and hoping to continue that with supplementary games I've been making on the side.
Excellent.
My name is Kelly Harper. I am 1/2 of Projectile Entertainment. We made a game called Momentum. It's a 3D ball and labyrinth business game. It was released on Xbox One and Steam like a year or two ago. Somewhere. Did very well. Right now I'm working at a medical device manufacturer on a training game for one of their upcoming devices.
Cool. All right, so let's get to know you all a little bit. We have enough people we can each shout out your favorite game.
Favorite game?
Yeah.
Super Mario Bros. 3. Are you allowed to steal other people's?
Yeah. Super Mario Brothers 3, excellent choice. Most sold game ever for its time.
I would say Secret of Monkey Island.
Nice. Old classic point-and-click adventure, Secret of Monkey Island.
Too hard to pick just one, but if you're going to make me choose, I would go with Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Classic. I guess you'd describe it as a 3D platformer with lots of glib. And what about your skills? What do you do?
I'm an aspiring programmer.
Programming, okay.
I fake being an artist, and I program sometimes when I get down to it.
Okay.
I design, program, and do art.
Okay. So we have some of each, and then the programming. And then talk about your current game projects, and this will kind of give us an idea of what kind of situations you might be in.
I have a couple like small prototypes I've been working on for the last, so me and I, along with 2 other people, have been working on kind of a learning project that 4 months? Yeah, we've been working on for kind of like 4 months or so, and recently come to the conclusion that we really don't want to do anything else with it. So we're kind of, we've been putting probably another month into it just to kind of get it to a state where we be like, we made this, but you know, if it's really going to go anywhere from there, we'll go on to a new project.
Yeah.
Is it a learning project in that you're learning about it, or is it an educational project?
Oh, the former. Yeah, no,
Okay.
we're learning on it.
Yeah, okay.
It basically, just like genre, it was kind of in the strategy genre, which is very ambitious because in order to make a strategy game fun, there needs to be a lot of depth, which makes it a very difficult first project.
Yes.
So that was a big lesson learned for where we go next. But
Cool.
that.
Okay.
Mine's a rhythm game for mobile devices. I try to make it easy with one-touch controls, and I'm also doing a bit of, not really processing, but kind of reading audio data and making like a spectrum with it.
Cool. So a mobile rhythm game where he's actually processing some of the audio data, and then the other two are working on a strategy game that they've learned requires much more depth than they were planning. Just kind of repeating for the camera because the microphone's like right here. All right, so we're going to talk about strategy and experiences getting unstuck. I'm going to go over some of my thoughts real quick, and then we'll go. I kind of approached a veteran in the industry about this, so we'll go over his response, and then we'll get to the questions. So I think you can kind of divide it into a few categories. When you're stuck and you need help, you can ask people around you, reach out to mentors. I've done mentoring before for people in college that are trying to get their own project off the ground and have questions. And then IGDA, of course, offers mentorship programs. You can check out at igda.org. And then there's on the internet, kind of blurring the lines there. You can find peers on the internet in forums and such, but it's kind of different than when you meet in person, you know. Especially when it's specifically an event for game developers, for locals, and it's an event meant for you to like show each other what you're working on and get feedback. But you know, there's obviously Google and web search, Stack Overflow. I'm sure you've all heard of it. A great site for getting questions answered. Gamma Sutra is kind of the place where I find a lot of interesting articles about people's experiences, which is more often like there are business questions on Stack Overflow, but Gamma Sutra I think has a lot of good postmortems that you can search and find. And then just general forums like gamedev.net and TigSource and stuff. The Indie Game Source, which is one of the forums. And then along the lines of conferences, there's GDC, of course, and then the IGDA has one that's tries to offer something that the other conferences don't, which is called the IGDA Leadership Conference, and it's specifically tailored towards people that are trying to start their own businesses and learning to work, like to manage people, which GDC has a little bit, but it's not the exclusive focus. So, and then you can find Code Camp. There's a Utah Code Camp, which is sponsored by Utah Geek Events, and there's a flyer for them back there. And then just kind of the last category is prototyping or contracting it out. If you're coming into this with more money than time, then contracting, you know, just finding someone on Fiverr or whatever to try to contract it might be the way to go to answer your questions or to figure out what you want to do. And then another slide that I was thinking about is so how do I ask for help? This is kind of also general. Obviously, you'll find the contact information for people. You can ask for people's email. You can get their chat handles on. For example, there's a Slack here if you don't know, the Utah Game Dev Slack, where there's even a channel for this kind of thing to kind of help people get unstuck. And you can also try just blind emailing people, even at bigger companies, and seeing like, you know, fill out a form and be like, do you have mentorship? Do you have, you know, can I talk to so-and-so? If you like have someone that you follow their blog, you might be able to post a question to them. And if they're local, you know, offer lunch and get their thoughts on your situation, which I feel like that's how a lot of people that got their companies started, that's probably where they got most of their advice, you know. And then of course when you're posting, make sure to include all the relevant context, especially on Stack Overflow. They really are sticklers about that. They want it to be useful to future readers. And then if you're posting in lots of places, you have to make sure it's not coming off like spam. You can make sure to like be part of the community for a while first, or sometimes there's forums that are specifically marked for self-help or check out my game or whatever. And then sometimes you just don't know what to ask, and it's really, I think in that situation it's more of a you have to sit down with someone and just kind of talk out your situation, or use the rubber duck method. I've heard some people say, just put a rubber duck on your desk, and when you're feeling stuck, just talk to the rubber duck and explain the problem, and then that can like help you realize things just by the process of iterating it out. So so I got this response from John Dean, who's been in the industry for a long time, and I'm going to bump this up a little bit so people can read. And I posted the slides, but I feel like I wanted some time in here to digest some of this, because there's a lot of good stuff in here, and it's interesting to see he's done things like tackling new consoles, and which I've only done like once, and having rumors go through your studio and having them disrupt productivity, which I don't know. He worked at EA for a while, and there was some times when those studios would get shut down, and maybe there was rumors going through, and he had to figure out, I don't know what to do about this, so he's run into a lot of things here, as you can see. And he likes to say, don't think about it as, I'm stuck, what do I do? Just think of it as troubleshooting. It's just a series of unknowns that I need to make knowns, is what he calls it. So when you just think of them as unknowns that you need to make known, then they're not threatening or overwhelming. So he says obviously the approach to resolving unknowns is knowledge. For each thing that you're not sure about, determine what you know, what you think you know, and what you don't know. And for the latter two, figure out what you can find out, how you can find out enough reliable information so that you can move everything into the I know this for sure column. And then you can start making plans of action based on this knowledge. And if there are ones that you can't, then you do have to sometimes make an informed guess. And that's kind of comes into the leadership. And has a lot of his experience as a producer. You need to make a timely decision, because sometimes there's just not information that's going to come. And you'll never get know for sure kind of information. So so then he does agree with me here about getting information from other people, making sure you're open to people's input, listening and taking accurate notes. You have to remember your own biases when you're kind of making these decisions and gathering information, and make sure that you try to make everything objective, make it so the data is standing on its own, and ask why. It seems like this why example he goes through here is something about like, why was there crunch time? So yeah, and then he talks about how this is a process, and then once you have your plan, share it with your stakeholders. And I hear him use this word a lot because it can refer to your studio owner, it can refer to your investors, it can refer to your customers, and some studios it's important to be upfront with their customers and have like a public blog that talks about every step you've taken. And that way, even if you are kind of just figuring things out still, at least everyone knows where you stand, what you're doing, and that you're being proactive about it, and that will come off well. Be adaptable. You know, sometimes when you share your plan, you might get negative feedback, and then you have to decide if you're gonna to hold off on it and change your plan, or if you're gonna just go for it and handle the whatever kind of opposition comes from it. And then, yeah, setting clear expectations is always good. The acronym I like to use with this is T. Drink your tea. You tell everyone everything, you explain why you're doing everything, and then you ask to make sure that what you're doing is the right stuff, is the right thing. And I've used that ever since my first my first trouble client, let's say. as soon as I started doing that and being really kind of over communicative with them, it really helped smooth things over. So they knew what to expect, and I was more often doing the right thing for what they wanted. And then just kind of a little side note, make sure, you know, especially when you're doing indie, you can stick to your vision as well. You know, be true to yourself and ask yourself, is this really the passion project I set out to do? You know, and that can help keep your motivation up. All right, so we'll get some go through the panels with some questions, and yeah, I think that will be good. So, Nick, do you have any stories about a time you had no idea what you were doing?
Yes, a few of them. I'll try to be semi-brief, but I think I brought them because I just I should just write down a few that are notable. Learning Unity for the first time. It was obviously when we were making We Need to Go Deeper, which is it became a 5-year project because we switched engines midway through. We were 2 years in, and we had basically the whole game made, and we showed it at a convention, and it went well. And then it also broke horribly because we didn't realize that Game Maker Studio just really wasn't cut out for a network project, a game that was going to be online multiplayer or LAN. It just didn't have the tools available, and we had even reached out to the Game Maker people and been like, hey, we've been having these problems. Do you know what could be causing this? And they're like, oh, we fixed that. Oh, that's good, because it's not fixed.
Oh.
So that told us that they weren't going to be very helpful or partners in this particular situation, so that we needed to jump ship and learn an engine that was sort of optimized for what we were already making. And Unity just came out with a shiny new networking solution. So that was where we went, and it was the worst 2 extra years of development time ever, because it was just catching up to where we were. And for me, I'm not a programmer. I don't consider myself a programmer. I do programming, but for the longest time, the programming that you do in Game Maker is not like real programming very much. It's theoretically like real programming, but not in practice at all. And just learning a new engine in general is really hard. So I had no idea what I was doing, just jerking around on Unity, trying to piece together things, because the other programmers were incredibly busy working on their degrees. One of them now works at NASA, so he's very, very busy guy. So I had to pick up some of that slack, and so all I did is the quickest way to learning Unity for me was to stop watching the stupid Unity tutorials that they make themselves and walk you through in this incredibly slow, boring pace that puts you to sleep, and just downloaded one of their complete projects and just started modding it and tweaking it and finding out, oh, they have a shooter example. Okay, so I'll look at that and I'll say, all right, I want to add a slow motion mode anytime I do a cool kill. That sounds like a fun thing I can do in a moment, and I'm not making a ball move. I'm making a cool slow motion sequence in this already kind of fun shooting game, and that taught me way quicker, sort of the how you're supposed to approach Unity and like how variables work and how you're supposed to actually be using them, and because like for context, if anyone hasn't used GameMaker, in GameMaker you don't even have to define whether something is a bool, an int, or anything like that. You just write variables out like whatever. It'll just assume it knows what I mean, and it does. And so going from that to something where you have to like explicitly define it was so baffling to me. But anyway, at the end of that first year of learning Unity, I had managed to make like it's still in the game. It's a fully fleshed out procedural generation for caves that actually works pretty dang well and provides enough variety that the caves don't get super old. It's nothing like Spelunkies or anything, but it's, you know, for learning the ropes, that was a more fun way to learn the ropes than doing it the grueling way. If I were to jump on to one more particularly notable one, it would just be balancing We Need to Go Deeper, which was, once it came out, we were doing early access, and we realized that people could just rush through the whole game and beat it and without like facing any enemies. Like enemies were basically optional. You just run past them all, and if you just drive past them all, then there's no game. And so we were baffled about how to approach this, and so we were like, oh, what if we made fuel a resource? So like when you turn up the engines on your submarine, it uses up more fuel. So you can get fuel at the like pit stops in the game, but that way you're not just like blasting at full speed the whole game. So we put that change in, and everybody hated us for it. They tore it apart. We lost several longtime fans just permanently. They were just so like, nope, this ruined that killed the game for me. Sorry, I'm gone. And so we looked to other stories about game balancing as to see what they did, and the one that stood out to me was the World of Warcraft guys have a famous story about how when the game first came out, they you got an XP reduction if you didn't sleep, and everybody hated that, and they changed nothing but just called it a bonus when you slept instead, and everybody loved it. So like no numbers changed during this process. They just recontextualized it. And I thought maybe we could do this for our fuel. And so we you know, not when I say we, I mean the people smarter than me did the math so that our numbers would be the same. So that what we did instead was give you a button that uses fuel, and that's your boost button. You go faster when you push the boost button. And really, the boost button just makes you go the maximum speed that you used to be able to go already. But now it's boosting, and it feels better. And the submarine goes slow. At all other times, it's slower proportionally to before we did the fuel change. And now it's fine. Now people are okay with it again. So,
Nice.
So yeah.
That's what you're saying. Our people are dumb.
Yes.
Not everyone's a game designer.
Recently, actually, in this training application that I was building for the medical device manufacturer, just started getting to the point where we were trying to put data from the device into the game. And they have, you know, their whole stack of DLLs and such. And since Unity's built on a mono backend, and they were doing stuff in .NET, there was a lot of incompatibility issues. So we fought with it for a while and tried to, you know, recompile and take things out, and remove dependencies, and did not work. What we eventually ended up doing was building a separate application to generate that data, and then had an idea, which actually ended up being a common idea, for basically just sending that data to a different process. Turns out that's called a message broker. We used a service called RabbitMQ. It's a message queuing service. Basically, you just send your data as a string and then retransform it on the other end into what you need. So that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it's surprising how much performance those things can add.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for Animal Jam at one point too. I'll just do a brief kind of. I can't share all the details of the story, but there was one time I had no idea what I was doing, and there was nothing. There was no documentation. Nobody was doing this kind of stuff yet, and it turned out it's just because the technology on our platform wasn't there yet. So sometimes there really is nothing you can do. Like, the reason you have no idea what you're doing is because it doesn't exist. But and that kind of goes back to what John Dean was saying about, figure out a set amount of time, how much time you can afford to put in on something, and then if it's just not going to work after that, if it's still not working, then it probably doesn't exist. Have faith in your developers. If it was going to work, they would have got it working, in any sort of reasonable amount of time. And then we just have to switch gears, sometimes. So. Okay, next, how do you stay prepared in your career to reduce times like these where you're getting stuck?
Yeah, prepared. I mean, I guess I've learned to hoard and collect contact information like it's Pokemon. Anytime we'd have a horrible problem that was very ultra specific to us and our game engine and what the tools that we use, I would do some forum foo and find people who maybe probably use similar things. We Need to Go Deeper uses specifically UNet networking with a NAT traversal asset so that we don't have to pay as much for server stuff, so people get connected to each other directly. And we bum off the Steam matchmaking servers because we're only selling it on Steam really right now, and whatever. And those three are really specifically, you have to do some specific black magic to get them to talk to each other. And it seemed like nobody else had this, but someone did. You're almost never the first one to do anything. So I don't know, just hoarding those people's contacts or tweeting at them so you can get them seems to have been a good habit to making sure that if something does come up in the future, you have someone you can yell at and go, wait, do you know what's going on? So yeah, that's the main. I don't know what else you could do to be prepared for when you're over your head, because I guess that's sort of the definition.
Know everything beforehand. Contain all.
Get smarter.
For me, it's just generally part of my research process is when I come across some concept, maybe just tangentially mentioned, just kind of file that away. It's this word goes in this bucket. I'm going to put a big hole where that goes, that definition. And eventually, invariably, it comes to a point where I have some problem, and I think of that hole, and now I have a keyword to search for. So I just go search for that, I learn that thing, and probably file some more blank holes around, and yeah, there you go.
Collecting terminology
Yeah.
for the different particular problems, basically vocabulary of horrible things that can happen. That's what it's called when that happens.
I mean,
and what NAT means, for example.
You're a pretty special person if the problems that you have are unique.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
As far as me staying prepared, I think I follow Nick's result there. Like, and it also just knowing a bunch of people comes in handy for job connections and mentoring and side projects and lots of stuff. So parties.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are some of your go-to resources when you have a problem that no one at your studio has done before?
I guess I mentioned some of that already, which is just other people who have had that problem before, or if they hadn't had that problem but they're using the same tools, figure out they must have done something right, so maybe they know something. I usually just hand off. I usually find these people. I don't email them myself because I'm not the one doing all the super hard technical stuff, so I'll just pass our network guy, here's a bunch of people you should email and ask them, because you know how to phrase it. Which sometimes they just won't know. But other than that, if I don't know anyone specifically, I'll always go and shout on forums about problems because everyone likes to come in with answers. So sometimes some one of those answers will be a good one. So I really like. You didn't mention this one, but. And in fairness, it's sort of a dying website now, I think quite literally. The creator is sick or something. He's actually dying. So it probably won't be around for much longer. But the game development community at Something Awful is usually pretty, they seem like pretty smart folks. A lot of them made games that are pretty successful. Like a lot of successful games come out of Something Awful. You've heard of Dropsy maybe, or what else?
I think Super Meat Boy actually came out of that, didn't it?
I think he might have been on the forum. No, that was Newgrounds. All right, that's Hollow Knight. That guy was a Something Awful user. So was the guy who made. You probably heard of this. Shower with Your Dad Simulator.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Yes. That's a game.
Shower with Your Dad Simulator. The full title
my
is.
favorite game answer.
Shower with Your Dad Simulator. Do you still shower with your dad? Is the full title. So that was a little breakout success. But there are a couple of good games have come out, and so they seem. Generally, they seem like they know their stuff, so I like to shout at them a lot.
For me, it's just getting really good at using Google and learning to filter out things, which is just the hiking key. It's amazing.
You're finding your Google foo.
Yeah.
So you can do a minus a term, you put a minus in front of it, and it excludes things. It's really nice.
Particularly good when there's a word that exists in multiple fields. So that just usually leads to the documentation for whatever I'm doing, really, which is usually enough. As far as forums, the most useful forum for me has been one that's not generally applicable. Is the NDA Xbox Unity forums. Those guys are pretty alright.
Cool.
Sorry, it's not very helpful.
Yeah, that's good. Like most platforms, when you get into them, they will give you a developer-only area. Like Steam has one, and Xbox has one.
Steam's is garbage.
Steam's is full of a lot of people now.
Full of idiots now.
Trolls. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm mostly the same as Kelly on this one. I think if I've done enough filtering, and Google has learned, I feel like to tune my search results for programming answers, and so it usually leads me to Stack Overflow, like I was saying before, and Gamasutra, and I don't know. There's a few others, but I would say those are my go-to. And sometimes especially if it's a project where I'm working with new hardware or whatever, if I can't find the answer in the developer area, they usually have a contact that can try to get an answer for us. When I worked on Nintendo hardware for the Nintendo DS, that was how it was. They when you do a launch title with them, they were really on top of things, answered questions and stuff. All right, so let's open up to questions from the audience.
You made you pick Dale of it.
So actually, I'm kind of curious. So you mentioned like the Xbox NBA, whatever. So they have like the Xbox at ID program. Is that like the route into that area, or are you familiar?
Yes.
So can you speak a little bit to like the process you went through to get, I guess, approved for that? Like, what hoops did you have to jump through?
How do you get into the developer areas for specific platforms?
With Xbox specifically, it's just getting your pitch down first before you send it to them.
You send it through some official.
Yeah, it's an official submission form.
Submission form. Okay.
You can just Google it and you'll probably find it. That being said, Xbox is doing something that allows people to just generally publish on Xbox in a not ID at Xbox way. That won't give you access to the ID at Xbox resources. But
they have some new form of like the indie thing space or something. Or?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
It's
yeah.
peasant space. That's where I am.
Like, I kind of want the doors to be shut as hard as possible now that I'm inside. Protect my market visibility. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, if you look back at your pitch after not having seen it for a while, and you wouldn't buy the game that you're pitching, it's probably not a good enough pitch, and you need to work on it again.
What point in development were you at, like when you decided I'm going to pitch this? Were you just like idea state, or you had like a prototype and you had?
I had a prototype, personally.
Did you have more than a prototype? I feel like you probably had more than at that point.
Yeah.
When you pitch it to Xbox for Xbox One, or did you pitch it to for Xbox 360 like back in the day? And
No, there's like
over?
a vertical slice from what I remember.
It was vertical slice. It was back in the like Game Wars days.
Okay. So. I'm curious too. Yeah.
When you say vertical slice, you mean like you had some of everything, like you had like the engine, you had art and everything, but you didn't have it fleshed out.
All the content.
Yeah,
Like
that's what vertical
yeah,
slice is.
like a
Just like, wow, this looks like
every
a full
technical
game turns to
feature.
a wall, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah.
So.
I've heard. So there's a local studio, Wahoo Ninja Bee. I've heard. They got in with Microsoft, and from what I understand, that was mostly through networking at GDC.
Because they're always the first in the gate with whatever Microsoft's working on.
Yeah.
Now, right? Like their most successful game was the first game to utilize the Xbox avatars.
Yeah.
The Kingdom for Kelflings.
Kelflings, yeah.
Kelflings.
Yeah. And now they're on the Surface, and yeah. But they're doing lots of different things. They do have a PlayStation VR game out and stuff. So.
Oh.
So yeah, networking at conferences, and there's even local events. I met someone that probably could have gotten me into the ID at Xbox because they came and sponsored a Utah Indie Game Night 3 years ago or something, and that was pretty cool. And then yeah, just ask everyone you know. That's kind of a networking thing, and just be like, all right, I'm looking for a contact at such and such company, and often if a company's big enough, they'll have local things. Like you might even try going to the Xbox store, the Microsoft store here, and see, can you connect me through your corporate channels or whatever. And they're generally pretty helpful. Like that doesn't work with Google, but the other companies I think usually.
Do any of you have experience trying to work with Sony or Nintendo to get access?
Haven't even tried contacting them. Probably should.
Yeah, you have some. I mean, you have a ground of I'm already on a console. I'm already on a new generation console. Yeah. So we're good. Let me in. Yeah, I mean, like, the only experience I've had with this tangential thing, not regarding consoles, but regarding getting those big wig spots, those on Steam. Like, we got a daily deal, and we got featured on the front page during a summer sale. Now, the first one came from Valve. Valve emailed us and just said, hey, or sorry, not the first one, the second one, but that was what came first, so I shouldn't have mentioned it. Whatever. Anyway, the summer sale feature, they emailed us and were just like, hey, we're going to feature in the summer sale. Do you want to, like, take a deeper discount? Because you're going to be on the front page. We're like, yeah, I guess. Yeah. And so we did that, and that was great. And then we had their email now, so we weren't going to not bug them now when we wanted something. So it was like super. I hate writing every email I have to write to a Valve employee, but if you ask for something, it seems like, you know, there's a guy and he can just push a button. He has a CSV file with all the daily deals. Wait, did I not do it?
Well, yeah.
You got it.
CSV. He has they literally just have a CSV file of all the daily deals. And I asked, hey, can we I think we've been doing a good job. Can we get a daily deal? And he's like, sure. I put you in on the day you said you wanted. And we're like, oh,
Nice.
that's.
Yeah, and that's literally what it's like, from what I understand.
You just ask them and
Get
they're
a good
like,
connection.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you have like the right person or the right contact.
Which I guess it might be worth mentioning that this particular Valve contact, I yelled at him on the Steam forums to please come and tell our users who were asking for a 4-pack that you do not support 4-packs because you keep this a big secret, and it annoys us because it makes us look like the bad guys. So Steam, as recently, not super recently, like actually almost like a year out now, has stopped allowing 4-packs on Steam, except the ones that already exist get to still be there. And so people come to our game and they're like, oh, your game's a multiplayer game. Where's the 4-pack? I just bought a 4-pack for Don't Starve Together. Where's your 4-pack, you greedy developers? And we had to keep saying, like, we're not allowed, but it's just coming from us. So he came. So I asked on the Steam forum, can you please make an announcement or something that you're doing this so that people know? And he didn't do that. I don't know why they haven't announced it properly, but he did come to our forums and then say a thing. So maybe that got his eyeballs on our game in the first place, so that he would like check our stats and then like consider us for the summer sale thing later, which would email. Like, I don't know like what path that took, if it did take that path, but like I guess it's worth engaging with the storefront that you're on, period, just to make yourself heard, so that like they know you exist.
Side note, if it was really a big deal for you, you could basically do 4-packs on your own through your website through the Humble widget.
We could. We considered that, but then we're up, you know, like that might upset people who buy it on Steam who didn't realize they could buy it on our website for like a better deal, and then we're like undercutting ourselves, kind of.
Not really.
No, not really. I mean, that's still us. Like, all the sales still go to us, but like, the reason Valve stopped doing it is a fair one once we figured it out, and that might be the reason we also don't do it, which is, they said the vast majority of people who would buy 4-packs were not buying it to give their friends. They were buying it to resell the other copies once at the rate, like at just a little below the regular price, so that people who wanted individual copies would just go to these key reselling sites and buy one of the other extra copies. So if we did that on Humble, we'd be even more susceptible to that, because it's just a raw key instead of like a Steam gift link or what have you. So
True.
Yeah, we probably won't. We'll probably avoid it now that we know that that's why.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yes.
Your story reminds me a little bit of Cave Story. I feel like if there's an indie game that has a big enough following, it's possible to get noticed whenever Nintendo or Sony is like, we need to make a big indie push, whatever. Then they'll come out and they'll find the indie games that have a big following, quote unquote, and then invite them on. That's probably how Cave Story got onto Nintendo. And you might be able to find the Stardew and check some of the other indie groups that are pretty open about their process and how they're getting onto the Switch right now, and you might be able to learn something from there too.
Can I just keep going with questions?
We have 5 minutes.
So you're published on Steam and on Xbox, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Is like the rev split that you get there, like you can't talk about the exact numbers, right? Do you have an agreement?
I can't technically, no.
So can you comment, are they a pretty equal split between the two, or is one more favorable for you than the other?
You could say that first statement.
It really varies depending on platform and individual, like how much weight you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
When you're approaching one of these big companies, like it's really best if you know you have something to offer them, you know.
But if you're a small person, you just get the blanket deal.
Yeah. Some of them are better than others, and yeah.
So why it's a little bit of a shame that Steam Spy is having issues right now, because I've heard some stories of people being able to prove, quote unquote prove without breaking NDA that they were able to sell well enough on another platform that you should definitely let us on your platform, or you should definitely consider us for this, or what have you. So it seems like it was a pretty useful. It seems like Steam in general, there's kind of no reason not to at least just pop it up on there. It's obviously a lot harder now to have it go anywhere, but as like it could breed an audience on its own as well, and then you can use that as leverage to pitch to consoles, because they're more of a walled garden kind of thing, I guess. Unless unless you have someone's specific contact information, or you just have a solid pitch. I mean, your game is on Xbox, and you weren't buddy with an Xbox employee or anything.
As far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So with Steam Spy being in its current state, because that was kind of when I first was like, no, I think it's worth going this route because I would like to go this way. Like for me, that was a huge thing, going and being like, well, I really like the way this game looks and feels, but how did it do? Here's what I think, but what did the market think?
Yes.
So without that, is there any way for you to get a feel for how well something does?
Yeah, there's another. Apparently, there's another method called the box leader method, named after the guy who just asked some developers. He's like, don't break NDA, but just tell me how close my estimate is here. He just multiplied the review count on a Steam game by like 80 or something like that, and it was usually right. So, or it came close to correct. So I guess right now that's what you can do. Or honestly, because that's based on review count, you can just grok how well something's doing based on how many reviews it has right now. So, if it's got 1,000 reviews, it's doing really well. If it has the low end of like how many reviews should a game have that it's actually doing well enough that's probably people can eat who made it, is like, I think we got like 300 or something reviews on launch month for We Need to Go Deeper. I could be wrong about that. We have 900 and something now. We're not with the big boys with their thousands something count, but we're like...
Would you say ballpark you're within 80?
Within
80 times number of reviews? Is that a pretty fair-ish figure?
I actually didn't do the math. I really did bad at doing math in my head too. Hold on. Yes, actually, yeah, that is pretty close. So,
what'd you call that method again?
The box leader method, I think it's called.
Like
after Sir Box.
Box. I think last guy's name is just Box Leader. Box Leiter. Learned it off of Lars Doucette, who makes he writes, in my opinion, the best articles about marketing and market research and stuff. He and Ryan something from Crypt of the Necrodancer are both dead serious about doing market research for a game before you make it, and they both seem really good at it. Apparently the Ryan guy has been making games since before Steam was a thing, and he's managed to keep it going on his own. He said, like, I used to have to sell this on my website. It's like, what the hell did you make? I haven't even heard of any of these things. But they had audiences. So, yeah.
All right, that's all the time we have. You can mingle out there, but we've got to clear out of this room. So thanks everybody for coming. And the next events, make sure to sign up on the mailing list and then you can check with me for upcoming events. And yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks to the panelists for all your information.
You're no longer wanted in this room.